Hi there, my name is Amanda Woolston. I created this short video to give you just a little sample of what learning with me is like. The one thing that I really like to do when I teach that I think helps students learn the concepts better and remember them longer is I like to tell stories. So I want to tell you the story that I use to introduce the sensation and perception chapter to my psychology students. Now, sensation and perception refers to our eyes, ears, nose, mouth, our skin, and the information that we take in through those organs. And perception is, what does our brain think that we touched or that we saw? Its origins, or at least the origins that we acknowledge in the psychology tradition that we teach in the United States, begins with a man named Gustav Fechner. In the springtime of 1801, Gustav Theodore Fechner was born in what is now southern Germany. He received a degree in biology while he was also exercising his talents in writing, in political satire, in philosophy, and in lecturing. He also liked mathematics and physics, maybe even better than he liked biology. It was his work in these areas that won him an invitation to become a professor of physics. All of his interests in biology and mathematics and philosophy and physics seemed to just begin to merge together, while Fechner himself was very much struggling with the division between his skeptical science self and his deeply philosophical spiritual self. So this brought him to establish what he called psychophysics. Psychophysics studies the relationship between our mind, or in his time, they might have called it the soul, and what happens around us. Psycho meaning the mind or the soul, and physics meaning the physical world around us. Remember, Fechner is doing this all before the time of the father of modern psychology, Wilhelm Wundt, in his very first laboratory of psychology. Fechner, too, is up against a famed claim made by famed philosopher Immanuel Kant. And Kant said that the human soul is truly unknowable. In other words, it can't be studied by science. But Fechner was very much a scientist. He decided to study what is happening in the mind using what can be physically measured by science. Stimulus happening around us, like sound waves or wavelengths of light, through the physical organs of the body, like our eyes and our ears. And then what happens in our mind as a result. Some consider Fechner a mad scientist, both because his ideas were unusual for his time and because his research caused harm. He really only caused harm to himself. Fechner was fascinated by the effect of light on the eyes. He was obsessed with something called after images. An after image happens when we look at one image for a period of time, and after looking away, we are still able to see that image, or at least a semblance of it. Fechner wanted to study the effects of light on the eyes using the most powerful light stimulus of all, the sun. He would lay on his back staring at the sun hour after hour, day after day, studying after images in his eyes. He damaged his eyes so badly he made himself go blind at least once, and at one point his light sensitivity was so terrible that he had to isolate himself in a dark room for 3 years. Fechner was vital to our tradition of psychology. His self-experimentation on his own senses and his own mental responses set the stage to legitimize the later work of Wilhelm Wundt. Wundt made his own laboratory at the end of the 1800s, which studied the thought and feeling reactions to things like hearing a bell ringing or having an object dropped next to you. Fechner's desire to mathematically measure the relationship of the reality of the body and the mental reality of our mind led him to develop what we now know as the Weber-Fechner law. And next we would move into identifying the senses together, how each and every one of those senses works, weird things about those senses, and how our mind interprets the information that comes in through those senses. I have lots of other activities that happen throughout the rest of that class and also every class. So I hope you enjoyed watching this little sample of one way that I communicate information to my students when I'm teaching. I hope you even learned something new from it. Take care and happy learning.